Night has fallen, and the moon is a glowing golden orb in the black sky. See how it shines on the dark back roads of America, and on one road in particular. Come with us, and we'll take a walk down the moonlit road, for the night is waiting, and the moon is full.
The Moonlit Road presents Episode 9, The Gray Man, written by Craig Dominey and told by Neville, Carson.
Something wasn't right. It wasn't that there was anything particularly wrong, but every time Phil Buchanan woke up in the morning, anxiety and emptiness hit him in the chest like a sack of bricks. He looked in his shaving mirror and saw a 40-year-old geezer with a job that was eating him alive and a family that seemed to grow farther and farther away with every passing day. His wife looked at him and said, "Honey, I think you got some kind of malaise," which caused his 4-year-old daughter to begin running around the house shouting, "Daddy's got an amaze! Daddy's got an amaze!" and his 5-year-old daughter to go to preschool and tell all her friends very confidentially that her daddy had a mayonnaise. And it was true enough. There was something eating at him, something that just wasn't right in anything he did. The more the emptiness nagged him, the more he worked. And the more he worked, the farther and farther away his family became. And the farther away his family became, the emptier he felt. And the emptier he felt, the more he worked. It was an endless downward spiral. And at the bottom of it, he was sitting in his office, staring at the wall, trying to conjure a place or a time where things were right. And the only place that came to mind was Pawley's Island. Pawley's Island, a little spit of beach and marsh off the South Carolina coast, where he'd spent so much of his boyhood, a place where his family still owned a home, although he never found time to get there. Pawleys. Somehow the name seemed like an answer. Everybody at work was mighty surprised when Phil, work all night Buchanan, put in for 2 weeks vacation leave. "You know, September is hurricane season down there, don't you?" his boss said. "Yeah, I know. Keeps the Yankees out." A few weeks later, Phil and his wife and 2 daughters pulled up in their station wagon in front of the Buchanan house of Pawley's Island. In 10 minutes, the wife and kids were splashing in the Atlantic Ocean without a care, leaving Phil alone with the house. It was just as he remembered it. The gray weathered clapboards, the shutters that would shut out a storm or open up to let the breeze through, the wraparound porch that always had a shady spot, no matter what time of day it was, and the boardwalk, the raised boardwalk that went out over the dunes to the beach. It was a wonderful place, full of memories, but still, something wasn't right. Early the next morning, Phil crept out of bed, out the door, and across the catwalk to the beach to watch the sunrise. Just a glimmer of fire on the horizon it was at first. Then a thin red dome coming up over the water. And then, as though someone had pushed it up from behind, a fiery red orb setting the sky ablaze. It was beautiful, just as it had always been. Still, something wasn't right. Phil began to walk, with only his thoughts for company along the deserted beach. When he had been here as a boy, he'd been so carefree, so Unfettered, nothing to worry about except how many flounder he might pull out of the creek and how tan he could get to impress the girls when he got back to school in the fall. But now, even though Pawleys was so much the same, the Atlantic Ocean lapping against the white sand, the tall oat-like grass waving on the top of the dunes, the ramshackle houses standing somehow shabbily, somehow arrogantly against all weathers, just the same. But it was he who was different. Not free anymore, that was for sure. Responsibilities weighed him down everywhere he turned. There were the girls to raise, his wife, who he wasn't sure he even liked anymore. He wasn't sure she even liked him. The mortgage that took every spare dime, the car payment on top of that, the other bills, the job that consumed so much of his time. Things just weren't the same. His feet were splashing in the water of the South Inlet before he realized he'd reached the end of the island. Looking up, he realized that the day had changed too. The clear dawn was gone. In its place was an overcast sky. Slate-gray storm clouds were coming in from the north, and a strong wind was blowing gray mist across the Atlantic Ocean onto the beach. He turned to walk back to the Buchanan house, and stopped. Surely he was alone on the beach. It was so early, but something, a faint tickle on the back of his neck, made him feel as though someone somewhere was watching him. No, that was ridiculous. He started walking again, trying to forget it. But the feeling didn't go away. It grew stronger instead. The hairs on the back of his neck began to stand up. He began to walk, still faster. But the feeling grew. It was like ice coursing up and down his spine. The world wasn't a safe place anymore. It wasn't the same place he had known as a child. Anything could happen when you were alone on the beach in a backwater like Pawleys Island. He began to walk still faster, almost breaking out into a trot. The feeling now was almost as though someone was pulling him physically backward by the shoulders. "I'm not gonna stop," he grumbled. "I'm not gonna give him the satisfaction." The feeling grew, and he did stop. He turned. "Who is it? Somebody there? Can I help you?" Nothing. And then, from behind a dune shuffled a gray figure. Whether it was a man or woman, he couldn't tell, but whoever it was walked slowly and determinedly to the water's edge and stood looking out over the ocean as though waiting for something. Another sunrise, a ship, a miracle. "Can I help you? Everything all right?" Phil's reporter's instincts took over, and he began to walk steadily towards whoever it was. When he was several yards away, the gray figure turned and fixed him with a look that stopped him in his tracks. He stood there for what seemed like a long time, hearing his heart beat in his ears. Finally, he shook his head to break the spell and walked forward again. "Can I help you? You all right there?" As he was within arm's length, the figure turned, took a step, and disappeared into the mist. Good God! Phil began searching in the surf, thinking that whoever it was might have slipped and fallen in, but there was no one there. He ran up and down the beach trying to find whoever it was, but there was no one there either. Behind the dunes, just more sand. He stood out on the beach, looking up and down, completely nonplussed, and then realized finally that the only footsteps on the sand belonged to him. That night, an electrical storm blew in and knocked out all the power on the island. As Phil stood looking at the lightning crackling across the horizon, his wife came out to light a candle. "Huh," he said. "Maybe I saw the gray man today." "The gray man?" "Well, yeah, this morning I thought I saw somebody out on the beach, somebody dressed in gray, and they disappeared on me." It's crazy, isn't it? So for a minute I thought maybe I saw the gray man. "Who's the gray man?" His wife was curious now. "Well, you know, the gray man, the gray ghost of Pawley's Island. He's supposed to appear to people and warn them about... Oh, just forget it. It's stupid and I'm just going crazy." But it was too late then, because the girls had heard. "Oh, tell us a ghost story, Daddy," the 5-year-old begged. "It's lightning and out, it's lightning and out. You should tell us a ghost story. Tell us about the gray man." "Gray man, gray man, gray man," the 4-year-old began to yell. Phil was instantly defeated. He sat down and put one daughter on one leg and one daughter on the other. "We haven't done this in a long time, Daddy," the 5-year-old observed. "Well, you're right. We sure hadn't. Y'all settle right in here and I'll tell you the story about the gray man of Pawley's Island." A long, long time ago, before the Civil War, Pawley's Island was the summer home of many of the rice planters along the South Carolina mainland. They had beautiful houses here, and every summer they would bring their whole families and all their servants over to enjoy the cool ocean breezes and to get away from the terrible mosquitoes. Now, in one of these houses lived a beautiful young girl named Jane, and Jane was in love with a wonderful, handsome young man named Beauregard. Now, Jane and Beauregard hadn't seen each other for a long time, and when Jane found out he was coming to see her at her summer house, why, she was so excited. She had a big special meal prepared. She had the house all decorated beautifully. And Beauregard was so excited that as he came riding his horse across the marsh that leads onto Pawley's Island, he challenged his manservant, who was also riding a horse, to a race. And they began racing across the marsh, yelling at each other, egging each other on. Their horses were kicking up mud. The wind was flying in their faces. They were having a wonderful time, and suddenly Beauregard's horse stopped short and pitched Beauregard off. They had both landed in quicksand, and they were both drowning. The manservant was distraught. Beauregard yelled at him for help, but they were so far out on the marsh that there was no branch, no vine, not anything that he could throw to Beauregard and pull him out. All he could do was stand in the mud and watch his master drown. When Jane found out that Beauregard was gone, oh, she could not be consoled. She cried and cried without stopping for 2 days. Then finally, when she had calmed down just a little bit, she walked alone out onto the beach of Pawley's Island to be sad and remember her dear Beauregard. It was a cloudy day, a windy day, like the day we had today. And as she was walking along, out from behind one of the sand dunes came a young man, all dressed in gray. And as she approached him more closely, she found that he looked exactly like her dear Beauregard. The gray man looked at her intently and then turned to look out over the ocean. She ran to him, but as she was about to throw her arms around him, he disappeared into the mist. This was worse than before. She cried louder and longer. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't even walk. The family finally had to put her to bed. Not long after, Jane had a terrible, vivid dream. Beauregard came to her in a dream and told her, "You've got to get yourself and the family off the island. A terrible disaster is going to happen. Get them off the island today." She woke up screaming and telling everyone in the family that they had to get off the island right away, that Beauregard had warned her of an impending disaster. Well, they were so worried about her now that they took the family and the entire household to Charleston to get Jane the very best doctor that they could find. The day after they arrived in Charleston, they learned that a terrible hurricane had cut across Pawleys, destroyed all the houses, and killed everyone on the island. They realized then that Beauregard had come back as a gray ghost to save Jane and to save the family. And they began to tell everyone about their miraculous salvation from the storm. And that's how the story of the Gray Man of Pawley's Island got started. Even now, folks around here say that if you see the Gray Man on the beach, that means a hurricane's coming and you better get off the island. And that, girls, is the story of the Gray Man. Now it's time for y'all to get to bed. Come on. Later that night, when the stories were over, it was time for the adults to sit and watch the sky. The storm began to get much, much worse. The wind howled around the wraparound porch. Sheets of heavy rain hissed audibly across the dunes and the beach. And in the wind, the shutters began to bang back and forth against the house. Boy, this is looking bad, honey. Did you bring the portable radio? Let's see if we can get a weather report. I didn't bring the radio. No radio. Well, listen to me. Listen, I know this is going to sound crazy, but this storm is looking kind of powerful, and I can't get the Gray Man story out of my head, and you know, I told you I saw something like that anyway on the beach today. Maybe I'm just a crazy old man, but let's get the kids, let's get a few things we need, and spend the night inland, just for the night. If I'm wrong, it'll just be a big joke on me, and that's fine. If I'm right, well, maybe it would be safer to be gone. The next day, on the radio in the room of the hotel they had chosen, the Buchanan family heard that Hurricane Hazel had swept across Pawley's Island and destroyed the vast majority of the houses. A couple of days later, when the authorities began to let owners onto the island to survey the damage, Phil and his family were among the first people to arrive. Phil was terribly worried that this one place he cherished, this one place he thought might help him bring back the magic of his life, would be destroyed. But as they came down the road, he could see that even though the houses on either side had been smashed to flinders by Hazel, the Buchanan house was still intact. Even the towels from their swim that they had hung out on the clothesline were still there. He remembered then the other part of the Gray Man's story, that those who heed the Gray Man's warning come to no harm. He scooped up one daughter in each arm, leaned toward his wife, and kissed her hard, just like they'd done when they were courting. And then Phil felt the magic begin to fill the emptiness inside. In the following years, Phil Buchanan spent a lot less time at work and a lot more time with his family. And each year he carved out 2 weeks during hurricane season, on account of it kept the Yankees out, to spend with his family on Pawley's Island. And every day of that 2 weeks, Phil got up early and walked out over the dunes to the beach to watch for the friend who had not only saved his life, but made it worth living. The Gray Man of Pawley's Island.